Hey, good morning and good morning, everybody. My name is Rick Journey. I serve as Director of Communications for the Office of Public Information for the City of Birmingham. Thank you very much for joining us for this news conference from Mayor Woodfin. Mayor Woodfin will join us in just a moment with his comments. Beforehand, I just wanted to kind of remind everybody, the media that's on the line right now, as well as those watching. We have several guests with us today. We have members of the Division of Social Justice and Racial Equity joining us today, as well as Peace and Policy and the Director for Peace and Policy, Brandon Johnson, with us. Also with us today, we're very honored to have J.D. Jackson with us. Thank you very much, sir, for being with us. J.D. Jackson is a cousin of Benita Carter. Many of us know Benita Carter's role in history. So we're very honored to have you here representing your family and her. With that, I will pause. The mayor will make some comments. Then he will take your questions, and we will have a brief moment where he will be signing a document immediately afterwards. With that, I'm going to pause for a moment. I'm going to step away, and Mayor Woodfin will join you for his comments. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and I want to thank you for joining us this morning. Like Rick said, I definitely want to acknowledge and give a thank you to the social justice team here as a part of the Mayor's Office, City of Birmingham, as well as Mr. Jackson, who is a family member of Benita Carter. We know what this family has gone through and what they represent over the years and the history here in Birmingham. You know, Birmingham knows full well the history of those who have abused the power, their power to protect and serve. In the late 19th and earlier 20th century, black men were arrested for simple vagrancy charges and leased out to prisons to work in mines. During the Civil Rights Movement, police badges often symbolize injustice in our city, brutally and viciously denying our foremothers, as well as our forefathers, the rights of freedom. And we will never forget the name Benita Carter, a woman whose tragic death at the hands of police led to cries for reform and ignited change that reshaped the destiny of our city. It's why even today we have to work harder. It's so important that we work harder to strengthen the bonds of trust between our officers and the city they've sworn to serve. Today, as we stand here, 1 year, everybody, 1 year removed from the worldwide outrage of the death of George Floyd, and currently with names like Adam Toledo and Dante Wright weighing so heavily on our minds and our souls, we know what we must do. We follow the example set so many decades ago, the very legacy of this city. It's important we listen to our community, we take action, and we reform. And so in an ongoing effort to strengthen trust between Birmingham Police Department and the residents they serve, I'm happy to announce the formation of Birmingham's first Civilian Review Board. The Civilian Review Board is a collaborative effort birthed from our Public Safety Task Force and will provide a very authentic community voice to policing in our city. This task force puts moms and dads, faith leaders and community activists, young professionals, and more at the same table as our police force. The board will include the following members: the Reverend Lawrence Conaway, activist T. Marie King, former Birmingham Police Chief Annetta Nunn, and Public Safety Task Force members Victor Revel and Joyce White Vance. Everybody, this is an opportunity to build bridges, to cultivate trust, to creating more checks and balances, and for ensuring justice. You all know two core values of this administration have been transparency and accountability. The Civilian Review Board is a reflection of those values. Through unity, there is strength, and that's why we are putting reform in the hands of the people. Now, before I sign this executive order, I want to bring Rick Journey back up to see if there are any questions from the public or from the media.
Thank you, Mayor. We will start off and call, I believe, unless we lost her on the line and she can text me in if she has. It is Carol Robinson with AL.com there, please.
Hey, good morning. Mayor, can you tell us exactly how this review board will work and exactly what cases they will undertake?
Yes, thank you, Carol. The Civilian Review Board will have the ability to investigate citizens' complaints and some subpoena power allowed under Alabama state law. There are exceptions. The cases that are referred to the district attorney and or Jefferson County Personnel Board or the Department's Internal Affairs, the Civilian Review Board will not receive those. However, the Civilian Review Board will investigate complaints submitted by Birmingham residents in response to allegations of police misconduct.
Andrew Yeager, WBHM, are you on the line?
I am. And with regard to those complaints that the Citizens Review Board would hear, I mean, what potentially would happen after that if you had a police officer accused of misconduct? I guess how much influence, how much power would this board actually have?
Yeah, I think this board is extremely important, as I stated earlier, in building trust. But there's also a process. The Civilian Review Board, once a complaint is submitted, it will automatically trigger a 30-day review period for investigation. Upon the completion of that, that will be submitted actually to the police chief as it relates to recommendations from this board.
Erica Wright, Birmingham Times, is asking when will this board begin meeting and being active.
Let me bring, if you all don't mind, let me bring Brandon Johnson of Peace and Policy up to actually answer that question.
Good morning. My name is Brandon Johnson. I serve as the Director of the Office of Peace and Policy. With respect to the functionality of the board, they will meet in the next couple of weeks, during which time we will outline the complaint process and all procedures with an anticipated date to take public complaints in early July.
All right, thank you, Mr. Johnson. We have some others on the line that I probably have not called out. Who else is on the line who has a question?
Rick, this is John Baskey. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, John.
Okay, just really quick. I guess this is a question for the mayor. With you know the rise, and I say rise, the constant, I guess, violent crime, despite some of the categories that have declined, we've seen a rise in gun violence lately that the city has battled with. The chief has worked very hard to combat this. How do you feel that this, civilian review board, in tandem with the police chief, will help lower crime in addition to improving relations between the public and the police department?
Mr. Papke, thank you for that question. I think a couple things are important related to what you shared. I'll start with the last part of what you stated, which is how do I think this will help community trust and relationships. There are many tools in the toolbox of building trust between police as well as community and the citizens our police officers serve. Citizens review boards are not new across our nation. This has been an ongoing conversation this administration has had. And I will tell you that one of the fastest ways to build trust is for people to know that as a citizen, if I have a complaint, that the person I'm complaining against, there's not another person that in similar circumstances that's actually investigating that complaint. That there's a third-party organization and or a group of people who can see this from an objective standpoint, be neutral and submit those facts based on that investigation. And so that's a lot of words to simply say that trust. I think this builds immediate trust between the citizens we serve. Related to reducing crime, this is not necessarily a part of that subject, right? Many things have been put in place over the last few years. One is that all of our officers have an extensive use of body cams. In addition to that, some of the procedures and policies the chief has put in place and the ongoing, as far as our police being updated around their procedures, has led to better interactions with our community and the citizens. Police complaints have actually decreased over the last, citizens' complaints related to police interaction has actually decreased over the last few years. And that is a culmination of not just those body cams, but the values Chief really implores to the officers who are on the streets in front of our citizens every day. And so I think this builds immediate trust. Decreasing crime, not necessarily the same category, because this is more about police reform, police accountability, and transparency. And I think related to decreasing crime in my left hand and reform measures for your police department in my right, we have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time.
Chastity Maxey of WBRC is on the line. Chastity, you have a question?
I do. Thank you so much, Rick, and thank you, Mayor. This question is more so about the Derek Chauvin trial coming to a close. The jury gets the case today, and, tensions are, of course, rising across the nation. And how is the city prepared to deal with any potential unrest?
Well, first, let me say that George Floyd's family, and they deserve justice. And I hope upon the conclusion of this trial that justice is rendered. I think in regards to taking a pulse of the nation's emotions around this trial, around the nation's emotions and outcry, anger and sadness around George Floyd's death, and however this turns out, our citizens here in Birmingham have a right to peacefully assemble and protest and speak out to anything they want. We as an administration support that 100% and their First Amendment rights. I think part of that means that they have the space to do that, and we make sure they're safe. The only thing I will tell those organizers who are leading any efforts, if there are any, is that watch out for those who want to hijack your moment, because we acknowledge and support the peaceful protesters in the city. We just want to make sure they're protected and no one hijacks their ability to peacefully assemble.
Do we have any other questions from the reporters on this line? Any other questions? Just want to remind you and provide an opportunity before we take the next step with this news conference. Just remind everybody that Mr. Jackson is here, who is a cousin of Benita Carter, representing the Carter family and his family. If there are any questions for him, or if Mr. Jackson, if you have
anything you want to say.
Comments?
Good morning. My name is J.D. Jackson, and I am very honored to represent my family, the Carter family. And I can remember when my cousin was murdered by this off-duty police officer. She was only 2 blocks from her home, and I'm sure that her mom and her dad could probably hear the shots, but not know that that was their daughter being murdered. Her death brought about changes in the city, especially in terms of the face of who the mayor would be, because if nothing else, her death brought about the first black mayor, or helped to bring about the first black mayor of the city of Birmingham, and that, of course, is Dr. Richard Arrington Jr. My mom has me standing in her place, her stead, which is great, because my mom is also a civil rights movement, a documented civil rights movement foot soldier. Notice what I said documented, because a lot of people who say they're civil rights movement foot soldiers are not telling the truth. I could say easily they are liars, but I didn't say that. But I would like to honor my cousin and the rest of our family by saying, cuz I know that you were not born necessarily to end a life so suddenly, but maybe you were born in that way in order to make sure that our city became truly the magic city, and so that it would stop being the tragic city. Thank you so much.
With that, we'll ask one more time, and the mayor is going to sign the executive order in a moment, but before we do that, are there any other questions before we wrap up this portion?
Hey, Rick, it's Lauren Walsh from ABC 3340. I have a question for the mayor.
Certainly.
Hey, Lauren.
Hey, Mayor, can you also address for us what specifically is being done right now to address homicide rise in violent crime in the city of Birmingham? Is there any plan to put more boots on the ground, or what exactly is needed?
So I think a couple things are needed, and there are a couple things we're doing. One of the things that's happening right now, and I look forward to giving the press and the public more detail of this, is that there was a recent conversation between the chief of police, the sheriff, Jefferson County, the district attorney of Jefferson County, as well as the U.S. attorney of Northern District of Alabama. Collectively, from an enforcement standpoint, the conversation is centered around identifying those who are violent criminals in our city, those who we know what we would describe as shooters or people involved in some of those activities. And one of the things we want to do is collectively work together. One of the things the U.S. attorney expressed, and I have to acknowledge her in expressing this, is that when we look at other cities who have decreased gun violence, it's come from a coordinated effort. This conversation is not necessarily isolated to enforcement only. As an administration, I want you all to know we fully support prevention measures. We fully support reentry measures. The gentleman behind me, you see, Brandon Johnson, as well as the entire social justice team, has been actively engaged in prevention and reentry measures since the administration has been formed over the last 3 years. But what I'm speaking to directly is enforcement, because there is a small segment in this community who unfortunately have a reckless disregard for your life. They have a reckless disregard for my life, and they just shoot. And what we can't continue to have happen is innocent people dying at the hands of a small segment of people for whatever feud they have. Just be reckless. And so we're going to put additional resources on the ground from a coordinated effort. And this, what I have to say, is directly to those who are involved in that activity. You should stop. And if you can't stop, we'll help you by sitting you down. And so we're going to continue to aggressively address this issue from an enforcement standpoint. Again, not taking away the prevention and reentry measures, but we're going to increase our enforcement measures. In addition to that, what I have to acknowledge publicly is that we need additional eyes and ears in the community. The first thing I want to acknowledge is there are people who want to come forward with information, but we need additional resources, probably from the federal government, as it relates to witness protection, to protect those who want to come forward but are afraid or in fear of retaliation. The other thing we need to do is empower our citizens across the city. I have a genuine belief that majority, like the super majority of the citizens of Birmingham, are law-abiding citizens and do the right thing. I think it's time to empower our citizens in their individual blocks throughout the city through the form of a neighborhood block watch programs where we train our citizens to be the additional eyes and ears. We're not asking them to be Superman or Superwoman. We're not asking them to put on the cape. We're not asking them to go pick up a gun. We're not asking them to engage any illegal activity they see. We only want to train our citizens at every level to be additional eyes and ears. So either to help assist and possibly prevent something by just being present, or help us solve crimes by being additional eyes and ears where they have seen something and able to share some information that may be helpful to bringing justice to a possible victim. So these are the things we will continue to do and look forward to additional information being shared with the public.
Mayor, we have one more question. Again, this is from Erica Wright with Birmingham Times. The question is, how did you select the members of this civilian review board, and what qualifications were necessary for them to serve?
So couple things. I'll start backwards. They have to be over the age of 19. They must be a resident of the city of Birmingham. That's with the exception of one. I'll explain that in a minute. That they agree to submit to a background check, not have any pending criminal cases, concerned about police and community relations, and sensitive to community needs and perceptions, and have a willingness to commit to serve. Now, the Civilian Review Board consists of 5 members. Each member has 3 of those members out of 5 have a certain background. One is a a former prosecutor or judge. 2 is a retired Birmingham police officer. 3 is a current criminal defense attorney practicing in Jefferson County. And then the other 2 are community members at large. So those 5 members, where 3 have certain backgrounds, and the other 2 are community members at large.
Thank you, Mayor. With that, we're going to transition in our over here, and the mayor will go and sign into the executive, sign the executive order. Mr. Jackson, if you would stand beside him. Sure. Mr. Johnson, you can get on the other side.
Mr. Jackson, this is your copy I present to you and on behalf of your family. Even all these years later, your family, with the injustice you all had, is still a motivating factor for the city of Birmingham to continue its reform efforts and do the right thing. Thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. That will conclude this news conference. If you have any follow-up questions, we will be sending a release momentarily. If you have any follow-up